I believe there's a connection between what is happening right now with NFTs and crypto art and crypto collectibles, crypto music, if I may, crypto poetry, and especially by the young people, because they are saying, hey, now I own this token. And for younger people, it's like, I own my cryptocurrency. It's in my wallet. I only have the digital key or the private key that controls the sending kind of operation. So therefore, I own it, right? So this ownership is the main component of privacy. Privacy, we say, it's 80-90% control, right? The other component is anonymity, and the other the other component is confidentiality. This is where they die. This is where we come to win. We come to fly. This is where we make our dreams come to life. Welcome to Innovation City.
Welcome to Innovation City, a podcast featuring the innovators, creators, and disruptors who are fueling innovation in emerging cities across the nation. Super excited. I'm here with my co-host, Leanne Buchanan.
Hello, everybody.
And today's special guest is Daniel Uribe.
Thank you very much. I'm super excited to be here as well. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Well, Daniel, I just know that this conversation is going to blow everybody's mind because the first time we talked, I was like, you're doing some really, really fascinating things that are super disruptive. And that's kind of what we're here about. But before we talk about what you do, I want to learn, and we want to learn a little bit more about who you are. So I love to start off the conversation by asking our guests, what is your superpower?
Thank you very much. I believe my superpower is faith. I consider myself a person that has a lot of faith in humanity, in God, my family.
And you are someone that has a really interesting background. But I want to understand what got you interested, excited, or exposed to the area of technology, blockchain, and genetics.
Of course. No, thank you very much. So I've been a cybersecurity professional since 15, 16 years ago. I started my career in a very nice company called Sun Microsystems. They invented Java, so I was really fortunate to be there. I was trained in Unix systems, not in the Windows kind of side of computing, which also allowed me to work with big companies, banks and telecommunication companies, most of them. But getting back into the blockchain, in 2015, I was able to travel to Silicon Valley. I'm originally from Mexico. And I was lucky to enroll in a Singularity University executive program. So I was very attracted to this exponential mindset, right? About Peter Diamandis and all this trend. And that's where I learned for the first time about blockchain. And being kind of an IT guy, I was my mind just blew that morning because it said, "Oh, this is the perfect way of keeping the data safe, right? Not having a centralized authority to decide what comes in, what comes out, or what to erase, etc. Right? So it was really amazing.
Now, I also want to dig further back because before you became a cybersecurity expert,
right,
you were probably younger.
Yes.
So tell us about, your childhood, what got you interested in technology, where did that spark first start?
Oh, that's an interesting question because all my family, my brothers and my siblings comes from the mechanical engineering kind of side of science. And I was the first kind of rebel to say, hey, I believe electronics will rule the mechanics eventually, right? Because it was 1990, and maybe somebody is kind of funny, but in 1990 in Mexico we had the first fuel injection car, right? I mean, it was the first engine that was controlled in the injection system by computers. So my father, who was, he had repair shops for automotive, was, oh, now what I'm going to do, I cannot repair computers, right? So I said, hey, that's the opportunity. I was roughly like 12-year-old, something like that, 12, 13, and said, hey, I need to be not a mechanical engineer, but an electronics engineer. And that's what I did. My brother said I was crazy, that I was like not betraying the family, but, like saying, hey, computers are just chips, and the cool stuff happens with the gears. But anyhow, now we're here.
That's forward thinking, and what you're doing now is forward thinking. I'm captivated by this idea of decentralization.
Right. No, I mean, the last 30 years have been amazing in terms of computing. Obviously, every day is new improvements, but yes. So back into the decentralization, we started a company back then to try to help Mexican immigrants to pay for bills back in Mexico without having to send the money, because the regulation is what really is the expensive part of the remittances, not the technology part. So what Marco Montes, the CEO of Saldos, that company is still alive, I knew him because he was one of the few Mexicans working in blockchain by then, much younger than me. He was my mentor actually in the blockchain. So he invented a cross-border payment wallet that had the first crypto peso, Mexican peso, represented in a digital form. So people, instead of sending money to their relatives, they are paying directly their bills. And this is just because the Visa and MasterCard networks sometimes are disconnected because of the chargebacks. I mean, if you pay something with your American credit card that is based in Mexico, sometimes the companies in Mexico won't accept that payment because they will not be able to fight for a chargeback. So they rather reject that transaction than accept it. So he solved the problem using the blockchain, actually the Stellar blockchain. So that was my first project, or involved in the first project. But a little bit later in 2017, my wife and I had an accident with our smallest kid. And so he poked his throat with a straw. We got distracted, and it was Angie's birthday, actually. And he started bleeding a lot. And then we went to the ER. And then obviously the hospital told us, hey, we need to run some DNA analysis because he's not able to stop bleeding. So obviously our son was diagnosed with a rare disease. He has some mutation in his 17 chromosome, and obviously was fascinated because I knew zero about DNA back in 2017. So then obviously I started like saying, okay, so how's the data generated? What is a sequencer? What information do you analyze? What algorithms? Where do you store the data? Who has access to it? For how long? And so on and so forth, right? Because these same questions are asked on every industry, right? Telecommunication, banks, whatever. It's the data retention, data, custody, right? So just by learning a few months later, say, hey, this is the perfect use case for a wallet, right? Everybody should own and control their DNA, or the DNA of your children, or the people, if you're a guardian, right, of the people you're in charge of. And that was like September 2017, where the concept of Genobank was born.
And I think it's just so fascinating that we're able to use these 21st century technologies like blockchain, like tokenization, and apply them to things that are so heavily regulated or completely overlooked, like your genetic data. we were talking before about the interesting application in modern times is of the HeLa cells.
Correct.
And so it would be helpful for our listeners to understand, maybe using that story, like what are the use cases? What are some of the things that you are solving for and giving people back agency over their genetic material?
Thank you very much, Leanne. So there are like usually 5 major cases in genomics, very fast. The first one and the most important one is precision medicine. That's where most of the interest is, because as you may know, cancer is a genetic disorder. I mean, you start losing the ability to replicate your cells. This is called aging, literally. So cancer is very personal. There's no two alike cancers. It's a personal information. So the cure eventually will come, hopefully, from actually the microRNA study, which is the baseline of the vaccines, right? So that's where we are excited. But there are many others, like forensics. Forensics is human identification. So we have now the case of families, separated families in the border of Mexico and Texas, right? Where the authorities needs to use DNA in order to reunite the kids or the minors with their relatives. So you need to prove biologically that they are related. Of course, this method cannot work for families that are not biological, which is also considered a family. But what I'm trying to tell you is that this is the main kind of tool. The problem is, again, that there is no regulation of who is in charge of doing this, and usually this information goes and mixes with databases that also have criminal records. Mm-hmm. So now the problem is that they are being profiled just because they are immigrants, but they are not criminals. So this is something that I believe blockchain should help to help the authorities. I mean, help the government to make the attestations, the proper attestations that these comparisons, this matching were done properly, but at the same time to eliminate the need that the FBI comes and keeps the data, right? Because that's not the use case. And then we have like nutrigenomics, we have pharmacogenomics. Nutrigenomics obviously is precision food, I mean your precision diet. And pharmacogenomics is how drugs interact with your own metabolism. And the last one is the ancestry, right? The ancestry is one of the most popular. And all of this is the baseline information is your genetic data. So what we're doing is basically trying to collaborate with all the scientists to have a wallet that could serve to any purpose, because this data is exactly the same, is your genetic data. Obviously, different regions of your genetic data in different contexts means different things. Like, for instance, in my son, obviously the 17 chromosome was the one that was looked with a very with much detail, right? But again, there's many use cases.
Wow. What does the future look like when we are fully decentralized, if that is where we're headed? And specifically like in the genetic realm?
Thank you. I mean, I believe the concept of having a digital twin excites all the industry, right? What is a digital twin? Obviously, the digital twin is like, there is another author that it's called the digitome, right? Which is a replica, an avatar, right? That has all your electronic medical records, your DNA, your RNA, your metabolomics, or how you process drugs. I mean, all the data sets that comes from your body in a digital way may obviously help a lot to predict many things. Like, for instance, if you're looking for the next generation vaccine, instead of doing clinical trials with real humans, you would use their digital twins first, right? and then you could computationally predict how the vaccine is going to work on different ethnicities, right? Like, for instance, I'm Latino, and like, for instance, the Chinese, the CanSino vaccine is not working very well because we were exposed to the vehicle that vaccine uses, which is the AD5, right? The adenovirus 5. It's a tropical virus, so we are super exposed to that. So therefore, when we got vaccinated with that vehicle, the information from the virus, I mean the vaccine, is not there. I mean it's destroyed before it reaches the cells. So those kind of things could be potentially simulated with digital twins in the near future. I mean we are talking 10 years from now.
This is all bringing up for me my Star Trek nerdiness and thinking a lot about like the computers and how it analyzes information, none of which happened back then. It was all kind of like fictional. But I'd love for you to talk about for a moment, how do we educate people around this? You and I have had some conversations. I nerd out a little bit about it, but the average person probably doesn't appreciate that they may have what I'll say is an intellectual property right in their genetic information, in their genetic sequencing, because it's uniquely theirs, just like a fingerprint is uniquely yours. So how do we educate people about their right to own their own data?
Well, it's fascinating. I believe there's a connection between what is happening right now with NFTs and crypto art and crypto collectibles, crypto music, if I may, crypto poetry, and especially by the young people, because they are saying, hey, now I own this token, right? So digital ownership is something that people my age, I'm 45 and up, would say, no, that's impossible. You cannot own data. And for younger people, it's like, I own my cryptocurrency. It's in my wallet. I only have the digital key or the private key that controls the sending kind of operation. So therefore, I own it, right? So this ownership is the main component of privacy. Privacy, we say, it's 80-90% control, right? The other component is anonymity, and the other component is confidentiality, right? And to be honest, young people, they are usually not against, exposing their data, but they do appreciate control a lot, and that's what privacy means in terms of the blockchain mainly. Obviously, in some areas, secrecy is desirable. I mean, but not, that is not the main component. Like, for instance, my son, I don't want secrecy of my son's data because it wouldn't make no sense for research, right? But I want to control who has access to that data, because I want always the positive side of sharing it, but not a potential negative impact, which could be a potential discrimination eventually for my kid.
So talk to me about the product itself and what it has looked like going to market.
Thank you. Of course. Thank you, Taylor. So it's basically what we do is we tokenize a biosample tube. So it may be, the most popular is a saliva biosample tube, but we can also tokenize a swab, or maybe, all sorts of tubes that are obviously proper for human specimens. Usually what we do is we create a unique token. We use the NFTs. We call them the bio NFTs to represent these biosamples. And we give the control of the private key that governs that biosample to a human, to the donor, right? So it's like we are not giving identity to the human related to the biosample, but the opposite. We are giving identity to a biosample in the blockchain, and giving the control to the human, right? So in most cases, the biosample is also considered the data that comes or is extracted from the biosample. So for us, it implies that if I can control the tube with my saliva, I will also be able to control the data coming from my saliva, which could be my DNA or my RNA or maybe a COVID-19 test result or whatever, right? And that is also, we also created what we call a secure data room. So we have a secure data room for individuals, and we also have a secure data room for families, because there are some studies that require the whole family to, be sequenced or be studied. In the case of rare diseases, this is mostly the case. So at the end of the day, it's Genobank.io is a governance or a decentralized governance kind of mechanism for genomic data.
Like mind blown.
Mind blown.
Thank you very much.
And with that, are you prepared for the lightning round?
Yes,
Okay.
I am.
Ooh, I'll start.
Okay.
So, Daniel, what does success look like to you?
Happy customers.
What makes you lose track of time?
Video games.
How are you making a difference in this world?
By decentralization.
What challenge do you want to overcome?
I would say, that's a tricky one. I would say not being enough time with my family. Sorry about all that.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah. That's it. That's all I got.
That was good.
Yeah, that was good. I'm
Okay.
like,
Daniel, how can people get in touch with you, with the company, social, website, all the good stuff?
Thank you. No, please reach out. I'm very vocal and present in LinkedIn, Twitter, usually Facebook, not that much lately. But my email is daniel@genobank.io. I'm in Twitter as duribb, or just at our webpage, genobank.io. I'll be more than happy to be there for anybody.
well, thank you so much for joining us. This conversation was so educational and also intellectually stimulating.
Thank you very much, Leanne. Thank you very much, Taylor, for having me. It's a privilege to be here.
Thank you for listening to Innovation City. If you like this episode, you can find more episodes at innovationcity.co or anywhere where you watch or listen to podcasts. Please subscribe, rate, and review, and we'll see you next week.
This is where it all begins, so say goodbye to all